in Kenya show evidence of having delays of as much as 10 years in competency in their first language. That is according to a study done today by the Deaf Child Worldwide. The report also indicates that teachers in the critical early years of formal education are found to be largely unaware of the impact of this delay on the children's global learning needs. The survey was carried out in 3 deaf schools in Nandi and Kwale counties early this year. Brenda Zeda has been keeping an eye on this story for us. Brenda, talk to me about some more findings of this study.
Well, Linda, as you rightly put it, there's a lot of concern from some of the stakeholders who've been camping here in this hotel, that is a Rover Pan-Africa Hotel, just to try and figure out on how education when it comes to deaf children in the country can be improved. But of major concern to these stakeholders is majorly based on 2 things. One is about the teachers who teach deaf children in the country, because the report states that some of the teachers actually do not even understand the language of the deaf children, because some of these deaf children are brought to school at a late stage when it comes to their age, as late as 14 years. So when they come to school at the age of 14 years, it is very hard for the teachers to have a clear communication with them, because some of the teachers lack the skills when it comes to communicating with the deaf children. Another concern to the stakeholders here, it's also when it comes to the skills that these teachers have. It is that most of the teachers who teach these deaf children just go to school to acquire purpose so that they can be employed, but the saddest thing is that some of these teachers do not even have the skills of communicating with the deaf children. It is also a major concern, saying that even the delocalization process, a rather exercise that has been carried out by the Teacher Service Commission, it is also affecting the learning outcome of students who are deaf, because they're saying that some of the teachers who are skilled when it comes to, interacting and teaching the deaf children, some of them are transferred to schools, and some of the teachers who are brought in to teach these deaf children do not even know how to communicate with the deaf children. There's also been a major concern, Linda, when it comes to remuneration of teachers who are teaching deaf children, because they're saying that low remuneration also demoralizes some of these teachers. And Linda, just allow me to talk to Richard Makusuve, who is a senior technical advisor of the deaf of the Deaf Child Worldwide organization that has been actually who is actually the person behind this report. And joining me right now is Richard Mukufuve. And Richard, just to have a conversation with you, it is that when you are releasing this report, there has been a major concern when it comes to communication between teachers and deaf children in the country.
Sorry, what the question? Repeat, come up again.
Linda, if I need to introduce him again, because he's also sort of trying to understand. He's a sign language interpreter, but also at the same time he has a bit of some hearing problem. So of course he's being helped by his colleague. So his colleague will also be interpreting some of the questions that I'll be asking him this afternoon. Richard, my question was, when you're releasing your report, there was a concern that there's a major disconnect between students who are deaf and teachers who are teaching these deaf children.
Okay.
If you may just join me over here, please.
I need to see him.
Okay. Linda, it is a bit of confusion over here, but if you may step over here so that you can translate what Richard Mukusuve is trying to say.
Okay. The biggest challenge that we have currently, the teachers, their language skill, deaf learners on their language skill is very different. For instance, the deaf children, when they come to school with a very low level of language skills. And the teachers, many of them, they are not very well equipped to support the children's develop their language. So that means in the classroom, communication is not that effective. The teacher cannot fully communicate more abstractly in terms of the deaf child.
And Mukufuve, when you are also releasing this report, you say that even those are major concern from stakeholders when it comes to the transfer of these teachers, because we're saying that it also affects some of the deaf students when it comes to education.
Yes, that varies in language, because for instance, sign language probably in Nairobi and in Western Kenya or the coastal region is a bit different. The same way with the Swahili, probably in the Western Kenya, the Swahili in the coastal region is different. But that does not make, or does not mean rather, that is not Swahili. Both of them are Swahili. The difference is the regional variation. What is essential is if the teachers are good and well conversant and fluent in Kenyan sign, the teacher can understand the sign language in the western part of Kenya and sign language in the coastal region.
And lastly, as you finish, Richard, another major concern is in terms of some of these teachers lack the skills of sign language interpretation when interacting with the students. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, yes. You know, sign language, just like any other language, a person must be practiced many times, must be well exposed in the community, or rather to the community that uses the language. But the teachers just went probably to the Kenya Institute of Special Education, learned the sign language there, but they don't have other opportunities to practice the language. That means after the college session, they go to the school. Then from the school, from the classroom, that's the only time they use the sign language. When they go outside there, they don't use. Unlike English, which you will talk in class and outside of classroom. You use it everywhere when you read, but sign language is less practice, which makes many teachers not very competent in it.
Thank you so much, Richard. Linda, I've been talking to Richard Nkusuve, who is the senior technical advisor of the Deaf Child Worldwide, just trying to tell us some of the challenges that deaf children experience, not only in Kenya but globally. But Linda, as I told you earlier, it is that a major outcry from some of the students we're meeting here today. It is that there is also need for the government to ensure that, especially the Kenyan government, to ensure that as much as they're trying to change the curriculum, that it's being implemented in phases in the country, there is also need to ensure that students who are deaf are not left out when it comes to some of the equipment they use for communication and training some of the teachers who teach them. So Linda, a lot is being discussed over here, and of course we shall continue keeping our views up to date. So I take you back to the studio.
Brenda, thank you. And say a very big thank you to Richard as well, looking at the challenges that are facing the deaf children in the country.